African National Congress security guards at Shell House killed 19 Inkatha Freedom Party members following a tip-off that the IFP marchers were planning to attack the building. The Nugent Commission of Inquiry on what casually caused the shooting rejected this explanation. The commission's conclusion was that the shooting by ANC guards was unjustified. Shell House in GP Street, Johannesburg, was home to the ANC after the organization was unbanned.
What started off as a march by thousands of IFP members to Shell House in the Johannesburg city centre, which at the time was home to the ANC after it was unbanned, to raise their concerns over the ANC's disregard of traditional authorities and the power of Zulu chiefs in March of 1994. The situation soon turned deadly. The IFP members clashed with ANC security guards at Shell House. 19 people were killed.
These soldiers are shooting us here. If the police can search this building, definitely the weapons which were used, you'll find them here.
Thank you very much.
Now the police, they will even show them the guy who was also shooting at our members. They done nothing.
The events of 28 March 1994 are intimately connected with their political context. It is notorious that there had been a long history of, at times, violent conflict between some of the supporters of Inkatha Freedom Party and others who supported the African National Congress, and the political rivalry was intense at that time. It was less than a month before the country's first democratic election, and a time of great turbulence with considerable potential for conflict, violence, suspicion and fear that the transition to democracy could be derailed. In about February 1994, the IFP declared its opposition to the holding of the election. Seen against the background of what was then occurring, there was a very real prospect that its opposition might result in disruption of the election, which could spill over into violence. Moreover, the Homeland Authority of Bophuthatswana had also taken a stance against the election and had subsequently been ousted from office on about 12 March 1994 by the government of South Africa, acting in concert with the Transitional Executive Council amidst reports of rioting and loss of life. Leading figures in the ANC were reported in the media to have threatened from time to time that the same fate could await the authority in Ulundi. 10 days later, the ruler of Ciskei succumbed to the pressure to resign amidst reports of an impending revolt of the police and armed forces. Mass demonstrations were also the order of the day, which at times were accompanied by violence. It is against that backdrop that the demonstration of the IFP took place, in which many thousands of people, armed in the main with spears, sticks, and an assortment of other potentially lethal weapons, but also with a significant number of firearms, converged upon the city center of Johannesburg to gather at the Library Gardens.
IFP members marching towards Shell House in GP Street in Johannesburg. This was the ANC seat of power. At the time of the march, the ANC and IFP were barely on speaking terms. Still technically under control of the apartheid state, national elections would only be held a month later. The IFP wanted international mediation on their demands. These included rights for traditional leaders and the Zulu king. The party had threatened to boycott the country's first democratic poll.
South Africa will be a catastrophe. We are going to destroy. No one will go to the polls on the 27th.
The organizers of the gathering made no formal approach to the police to alert them of what had been arranged. The police first heard of the gathering through their intelligence sources, and later they received from the magistrate a copy of the application which had been made for permission to hold the gathering. Colonel Peter Kalitz was at the time the operational officer at district headquarters in Johannesburg. Upon being informed of the gathering which was to take place, he summoned a meeting of the operations committee to plan the policing of the event. That meeting took place on Friday 25th and was attended by senior police officers and representatives of the traffic department and the army. It was apparent that the policing of the gathering presented considerable difficulty. No specific route had been chosen for those attending the gathering to follow to their destination, and what could be expected was that thousands of people armed with spears, sticks, and assorted weapons, and some with concealed firearms, would converge upon the city center from all directions, on foot, in vehicles, and by train, and that is what in fact occurred. Approximately 740 police officers and army personnel were to be on duty on 28 March. According to police evidence, they anticipated that there would be some intimidation, pillaging, and vandalism, and the planning was directed towards monitoring the demonstrators as they approached the city in order to guard against this occurring, to the extent that this was possible. The evidence as a whole shows that they were conscious of the inherent possibility that demonstrators might turn their attention in some way to strategic buildings in the city which bore some relationship to the forthcoming elections, and more particularly the premises of the Independent Electoral Commission and of the ANC, but there was no specific information available to them to indicate that this might indeed occur. They were aware that the ANC had their own security staff and were well equipped with firearms, and considered that the risk of this occurring at the premises of the ANC was minimal. It is evident from the evidence of Major Pesce, who attended the meeting, that they considered that it would have been foolhardy in those circumstances for any attempt to have been made to invade or occupy the ANC's premises, and based on the information available to them, I do not think that this view was unrealistic. There has been criticism of the police in the course of the inquest for their failure to prevent the various acts of violence which occurred on 28 March, and various submissions have been made as to the steps which might have been taken to avoid it, but much of this criticism seems to rely upon the benefit of hindsight. The police couldn't have prevented all violence from taking place. Thousands of people converged on the city from all directions, and violence or other acts of lawlessness could have broken out at any time and place. There has also been considerable evidence relating to what the ANC and its personnel are alleged to have expected to occur on Monday 28th. It is an issue which has permeated much of what was heard in the inquest, and in my view, much of the evidence was distorted to accommodate it. Some of that evidence was purported to establish that the ANC and its personnel had received specific information that an attack upon Shell House had been planned to take place during the course of the day, with the intention of causing damage to the premises and serious injury or death to the leaders of the ANC. There was some suggestion of this in an affidavit deposed to by Matthews Phosa, who was the secretary of the ANC's Department of Intelligence and Security, and in the evidence which he gave, but upon examination, his evidence came down to that he received information from an undisclosed informant that there would be trouble at Shell House on the following day, and he merely inferred that there would be such an attack. There is also evidence on affidavit by Tokyo Sekgwale that on Sunday 27th, he was informed by Obed Papela that the ANC's regional office in Shell House would come under attack, and he said that he conveyed this to General Khaleds in the course of a telephone conversation that day. Although it was not denied that a telephone conversation took place, General Khaleds denied that such information was conveyed to him.
Well, shots were fired on Inkatha people marching towards the Shell House, and shots were fired from various buildings surrounding Shell House. Some of the shots struck the windows at Shell House and vice versa. So you can't really say what actually happened, who started the shooting.
The shooting, a month before South Africa's first democratic elections, threatened to send the country into a violent tailspin.
I gave instructions to our security that if they attack the house, please, you must protect that house.
My reaction is that of absolute shock, because in the first place, the president should have said so, long ago, if this was actually the killing of people resulted from his direct instructions.
This was at the height of the political violence between members of the IFP who resided in hostels and township residents led by the ANC.
A trigger-happy ANC guard with a record of ill discipline started the shooting, resulting in the death of 11 Inkatha Freedom Party supporters. Some sources close to the investigation believe the first shot was fired by an ANC security guard with a history of ill discipline. According to an ANC official who was at the front of the building at the time of the shooting, ANC security opened fire after a group of about 15 IFP supporters surged towards the building. It is believed that most of the 11 dead were among this group. Sources said the organization identified the guard who first opened fire on IFP supporters on their way to a gathering called by Zulu King, Goodwill Zwelithini, in the center of Johannesburg. The Malian Guardian was given the name of the guard but didn't disclose it publicly. All we know is that he was a former Umkhonto weSizwe member, described as having a history of poor conduct in military structures. Even though the ANC supposedly received a tip-off that the building would be attacked on the day of the meeting, the organization's security guards were under strict orders not to use their weapons unless absolutely necessary. But witnesses in the building are reported as saying that as the march has passed, the guard in question suddenly broke ranks and started firing, emptying his weapon into the passing crowd. The armed marchers returned fire and pandemonium broke loose. Safety and Security Minister Sidney Mufumahadi told Parliament that the initial police investigation had clearly shown that the first shots had come from inside Shell House. ANC Secretary General at the time, Cyril Ramaphosa, handed 39 weapons of different calibers allegedly linked to the shootings to Witwatersrand Regional Police Commissioner Koos Kalitz. Ramaphosa and Kalitz also met to discuss identifying ANC men involved in the shooting. The meeting between Ramaphosa and Kalitz took place amid allegations in Parliament that Mufumahadi tried to cover up a refusal by the ANC to allow police access to Shell House and the weapons allegedly involved in the shooting. Mufumahadi said police had not been denied access to the building in the wake of the shooting. Democratic Party leader Tony Leon produced a memorandum by Kalitz which said police access to Shell House had been refused by ANC security officials and no weapons had been handed over for ballistic tests. At a press conference, Mufumahadi explained he had changed the parliamentary answer drafted by Kalitz after establishing from the regional commissioner that the police themselves had decided not to enter the building after ANC officials agreed to hand over weapons at a later stage. Mufumahadi insisted the police investigation into the shooting would go ahead unhindered. On behalf of the ANC, it was submitted that various senior police officers are criminally liable for the deaths which occurred. In its simplest terms, the contention was that the police could and should have taken effective steps to ensure that the demonstrators posed no threat in the vicinity of the ANC's premises. It is clear that appeals were made to the police on numerous occasions to keep the demonstrators under control and more particularly to keep them away from the ANC's premises in order to avoid the potential for any conflict to occur. It is clear too that the police had equipment and personnel available to them in reserve which could have been used for that purpose if it was required. The police were not obligated though to comply with those requests merely because they had been made.